They also believe, I interviewed President Pezeshkian several months back, and he said, we have the right to enrich uranium, and we are not enriching it to weapons grade. We're enriching it to the level that the IAEA has permitted us to enrich to. And that's why we hold it there, essentially. This is his argument, because that's what we can, sort of use as a power on the world stage to hold it at that level, just short of being weapons grade. What do you say to that?
Well, I understand he's the president of Iran, but he didn't know what's going on. Yeah. The fact is, they were authorized to have a weapons grade, they were authorized to have enrichment at 3.67% under the JCPOA. They exceeded that. Anytime you go to 20% and more, you're heading towards weapons grade. And we know, we are very sure that they were enriching uranium at 60 to 80%. You're heading to weapons grade. Right. And with their missile fleet that they had, we know they were heading someplace we don't want them to go and do a breakout on us. Everybody knew that. The president knew it. We knew it. That's the reason he walked away from
let me ask you,
the JCPOA.
General, let me ask you this. What is a military presence in the Strait look like? If they go into this meeting and they say, no, we're in charge of the Strait, everyone's going to pay $1 million or $2 million to us to get through. We have mines under the water. We know you've hit a lot of our stuff, but we've still got, buried deep missile silos that we can launch at any ship that comes through there, including your folks if you land on Carg Island. What do you say to that?
I say, go to hell.
I would sell them very clearly the negotiation table. You do something like that, you are dead.
Right.
We know where you're at. We know where you live. We're going to come and get you. And you don't have much of a military left. We're going to take care of that as well. We can seize Carg Island. We seize the 5 islands in the Strait, the Gosham Island and the Rock Island as well. We just make sure we go in there. We tell them that it's not open for negotiation. We're going to tell them what we're going to do. And they've rerouted the traffic through the Straits to bring it closer to Iran. That passage lane used to be further to the south, right. Closer to friendly territory. It's not anymore. We reroute the traffic that is supposed to be through the original traffic lanes.
They're rerouting because
they're freedom of navigation.
I guess if you pay them, they'll reroute you around their mines. Is that right? Really quickly, sir, if you can.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they do it or not, but if we have the ability to find out, and we do it through undersea drones or minesweepers, we can do it. But we tell them right up front that if we get a tanker destroyed or a ship destroyed, we go back to what Ronald Reagan did, where he made sure that ships were escorted through, and we make sure they pay the price for it. So you basically tell them you're alive today because of that. You're going to be dead tomorrow if you violate it.
Very, very important negotiations coming up in Pakistan, and we didn't even get to the Israel-Lebanon question, but we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. General Kellogg, thank you very much. Good to have you here, sir. This is what she talked about Jeffrey Epstein shooting down what she says are false reports about her knowledge of anything that he did. So let's just play it for you. You can hear exactly what she said. It's about 5 minutes long. Here's the entire statement. Let's watch.
Good afternoon. The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein's abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop. My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me, such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins, UK. Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then, and only then, we will have the truth. Thank you.
The reporters shouting questions when the First Lady left the room there. Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich has been asking some of those questions, trying to find out what else we know about this statement, what prompted this statement, why this afternoon. These are obviously, Jackie, all questions that are on our mind.
And I wish, Martha, they were questions I had answers to. Unfortunately, I don't. This came out of left field for us here covering the White House. The press shop did not give us any insight into what this announcement would be about. That's typical. Oftentimes, the First Lady doesn't share a lot of details with the White House communications shop that covers the president on what her announcements might be. We didn't, for instance, get a lot of details ahead of her prior announcement on her efforts bringing home Ukrainian children. But similarly, we had no heads up on this. We're not getting any information from them now, including whether or not the president was aware she would be making this statement. It's unclear to us if she is reacting to something or that's already happened, already come out, or getting ahead of a story that might be about to drop. We don't really know. And the content of what she's calling for, this congressional hearing to allow the victims to openly testify about what they witnessed, is new, and it will certainly breathe new life into this story that has in large part not been at the top of the news cycle lately. The attention here has been on other matters. So this brings the sort of public interest back to the Epstein story.
Sure does. Very interesting. Is there any sense, Jackie, that you can share with us of, you make an interesting point that there's not a lot of connection between the First Lady's office and the press shop at the White House. Do we have any sense of who she may have, collaborated with on this statement, and whether or not an attorney is someone who would oversee exactly the wording of this statement? Any insight as to who might be involved besides, or maybe she just wrote the statement completely on her own and decided to present it as we just saw?
Well, she has her own press team, but she doesn't have a sort of a permanent pool because she's not the principal. And so whenever she does events, they call together a supplemental pool that would then broadcast whatever it is that they are allowing press to come in and report on. She does have her own press team. We've asked them about this as well. They did not have anything to add. They said they were going to let her comments stand on their own. So unclear, who had a hand in crafting this exact statement or what her motivation was for bringing it to everybody. But they did, allow or alert the press shop for the White House that this would be happening. Obviously, a lot of interest from us, just still not a lot of answers on why now.
Yeah, it's interesting, and she obviously is very involved in this Take It Down Act, where things that are surfacing online, and big focus obviously on children and young people who have terrible images of them online, giving them the right to take down these sorts of things. She didn't tie those two things directly together, but we know there was a conviction yesterday, the first one, under that Take It Down Act. But she does say in the statement, numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been calculating, it says, on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. His images and stories are completely false, she says, Jackie.
Yeah, that line stood out to me as well, sort of flagging that the information that might have been circulating, especially I presume on social media, could be doctored. She's saying it's not legitimate and that people should be cautious. She also flagged that she was able to, through her attorneys, get retractions from some big outlets like HarperCollins UK, the Daily Beast, and I believe James Carville was the third. But she sort of phrased that in the past tense as though that's already happened. So it's unclear what's still out there that needs to be addressed. Or if there's something forthcoming that we're just not aware of yet. But I can tell you, the reporters around here, we're all looking around at each other like, what was this about? What is this related to? Did we miss something? The answer is no, we don't have anything on it, and no one that we're asking seems to. So more to come in terms of figuring out where to place this, but she does want to see Congress act, for sure.
For sure, and she obviously feels very strongly about this timeline and any suggestion that had been out there that Epstein introduced her, which she has shot down many, many times, and she laid out the timeline today as well. She said, that she met my husband and I met by chance at a New York City party in 1998. She said she never crossed paths with Epstein in any way, except that they were at an event in 2000 where she first, met him, I guess, casually at a party, as people do. It sounds like the gist of it. So, Jackie, thank you very much. I know we'll see what comes of it, but obviously she felt very strongly and wanted to make this statement to the American people.
And I, as one citizen, and my wife also, we're very proud of her.
For this congressional hearing opportunity for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Jackie, thank you very much. Jackie Heinrich.
Sound up.
Iranian flagged tanker crossed the Strait of Hormuz. So that makes a total of 3 tankers crossing since the ceasefire began, according to the tracking company Kepler. Fox Business correspondent Lauren Simonetti is here. Lauren, good to have you with us today. Obviously, just a few questions here. They can put any flag on any tanker.
For the most part.
That they want, right? So if it's another country's ship and they pay $2 million to get through, Iran can say, you know, we'll put our flag on the ship and you'll be safe.
Yep, and certain countries are guaranteed passage because they're friends of Iran, like China. So it depends on the flag that you get, the country where you're from, and how Iran is feeling that day.
So tell me a little bit about the tracking of this, because one of the things, it does seem a little obtuse, a little difficult to get a handle on what's actually passing through.
On February 27th, the day before the war, 130, 150 vessels, some of them carrying oil, some carrying liquefied petroleum products, some carrying jet fuel, cargo, they would cross this Strait of Hormuz freely. No fees, everything was normal. Then the war happened and that number grew to a standstill. Last week we were seeing a little bit more activity. Then we got the ceasefire and we expected that everything to just start flowing again, and that didn't happen. We are starting to see some more activity now, but 2 days of ceasefire and 9 vessels have crossed overall. I can't update that number because Kepler is, as I speak, giving me more information. It seems to be about 11 have crossed in the past 2 days. But what Iran is doing, if you guys can put back up that map for a second or that video, is there's 2 Iranian islands that are more north in the Strait of Hormuz. It's that one on the left, and it's the little island beside it, Keshem and Larak. Iran is said to be charging ships $1 a barrel. So a very large crude carrier would carry 2 million barrels of oil. That's $2 million. And they're having them go more north, closer to Iran, between their islands, because they say that's the safe passage. We know where the mines are, and you'll be okay passing if you pay us the $2 million.
It's like the mafia.
It's like the mafia. They're the mafia of the Strait.
You can get through the Strait. Yeah.
They're the mafia of the Strait of Hormuz. So what is the United States and what is NATO? And what are the European countries that are our allies and the Asian countries that use the Strait of Hormuz to keep their lights on? We don't need it. We have our own oil and natural gas. What are these countries going to do about it? I think this weekend is going to be very telling, and I will make one bet. Either ownership of the Strait of Hormuz will change, or it will never be as important as it was before the war as it is right now, because companies and countries are finding other ways to get oil out.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's interesting. These pipelines are full, and they're at higher capacity than they were before. The East-West pipelines in Saudi Arabia is one of the main avenues, so that would be a great way to sort of take the pressure off the situation and make it unnecessary for those who don't want to pay a $2 million toll as they go through. Lauren, thank you very much. Very interesting. Lauren Simonetti, Fox Business. And joining me now, Mark Levin, host of Life, Liberty, and Levin. Mark, great to have you with us today. I'd like to start by asking you to comment on this opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, and then we can broaden it out to the Strait and Israel, of course. And I point this out, this isn't the only paper editorial that sort of sounds like this today. Trump declares premature victory in Iran. It says the unfortunate truth is that Mr. Trump put himself in this position, inconsistent rhetoric on the war, claims of victory, and unleashing hell to Iran's civilization raise global fears and undermine support at home and abroad. The next test for Mr. Trump will be whether he takes his 2-week ceasefire deadline seriously. So that you can sort of throw into a ball of coverage that is quite similar to that. What's your reaction when you see that, Mark?
Well, I don't normally waste my time reading editorial pages because I don't care what about 6 guys sitting in a skyscraper have to say about anything. The fact of the matter is this: we wouldn't be where we are today but for the fact that this president did something no president has done in half a century. He said enough is enough. We're going to take care of this nuclear issue. We're going to take care of this enrichment issue. They're not going to get to blackmail us. They're not going to get to fund terrorism anymore. They've killed thousands of American citizens and military personnel. We're not putting up with that anymore. They're spreading terrorism all over the world. They tried to assassinate me. We're not putting up with that anymore. We're going to take care of this once and for all. We're not going to push it off to the next generation. My envoy came back, Steve Witkoff. He said they were bragging about the fact that they could have 11 nuclear bombs in 10 days. And I'm supposed to listen to Chuck Schumer? I'm supposed to waste my time with AOC? I'm supposed to care what some editorial page has to say? He's the president of the United States. He knows what he's doing. My issue here is, they say premature, he's sending mixed signals. Premature, I don't think he's premature at all, and he hasn't sent mixed signals unless he wants to send mixed signals, and that's the way he negotiates and so forth. So the fact of the matter is, this regime is dead. The question is whether we let it live, whether we allow it to breathe life into it, and that's why these negotiations are critical. I agree with almost everything General Kellogg had to say. They are dead men walking. Now, are we going to resuscitate them or not? As far as the straits go, that's international waters. They don't get to control it. There's 8 countries on the shoreline of that navigable area. Who says Iran gets to make decisions about what goes on there? They have to be put in their place. If it were me, I'm not president, so I'm just projecting. I'd say, here are my 12 points. You surrender, or we'll see you in a week or 2. And that's that. We're not there negotiating any kind of deal. We're negotiating their surrender. That's my view. This president has been up against the Democrats. He's been up against the woke right. He's been up against the media. He's been up against the UN. He's been up against NATO. And he's doing the right thing. They've had 15 years to figure this out. And he's figured it out. And he says no to all these other people that are wrong. What would we do today, Martha, if they had a nuclear weapon? They'd control the straits. And there's not a damn thing we could do about it. They control the entire oil in that entire region. That whole region would change with China's presence, with Russia's presence, and so forth and so on. Moreover, they keep threatening us. These are terrorists. These are suicide bombers. They'd be suicide bombers with nuclear weapons. And they could use those nuclear weapons to kill tens of millions of Americans.
Let me ask you.
Donald Trump's the president. He has to make those decisions.
Let me ask you, because the question of this ceasefire, and from everything I'm hearing, I know General Kellogg said, I didn't support a ceasefire at this point, but the president made that decision, and that's where we are now. So a lot is going to depend on this decision, these meetings that are going to happen in Pakistan. What's your take on it? Do you think it was too soon? Do you agree with it?
I mean, who am I? I wouldn't have done it, but he's done it. And he's smarter than I am. He has more information than I have.
Right.
And so far, when it comes to foreign policy and so forth, it's almost been absolutely pristine. So he has information I don't have. I think in the end, they have to be finished off. Unless there's some kind of deal. And I also think this government has to go. It's an illegitimate government. It slaughters its own people.
Well,
it's not a government of the people.
Same guys are in charge right now, right? I mean, we have not had a regime change.
Right.
The same guys are in charge. Am I right?
Well, here's my take on it. The fact of the matter is that we went to war with this regime, and this regime lost. We didn't go to war with the people of Iran. They're two separate things.
Absolutely.
We don't want a democracy project. The American people don't want a democracy project. So what? We take this regime out, we put in a temporary government, and they can figure out what they're going to do. Whether they want a democracy, whether they want a king, whether they want a prince, whether they want a queen. That whole area is full of dictators and monarchs. If that's what they want, that's great. We're taking out that regime because it's our enemy. We're taking out that regime because it killed our people. We're taking out that regime because they wanted nukes. And if it remains in some form, it's like a weed whacker. The weeds grow. They keep coming. You might get the top of it in the next level, but the weeds keep growing. And if we don't get down into the weeds, they're going to keep growing.
That's right.
Mark Levin,
Amen.
thank you very much. Good to have you with us today. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, we want to swing over to NASA right now, giving us an update on the historic Artemis II moon flyby mission with the crew set to splash down, very exciting, tomorrow. Coast of California tomorrow evening. They're supposed to break through the back into the atmosphere at about 7:45. Let's listen.
Because we don't get the service module back, right? It's something that we jettison. So we all thought, right? Flight control team, working in conjunction with our mission management team, and of course our engineering teams, made the decision to go spend more time to characterize that situation because it was more important, and we'd already gotten the data out of the manual piloting demos that we previously had. So that's why we changed the timeline and ensured we could really characterize the vehicle.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Marcia. Go ahead.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press for you, Ahmed. I know all the data and all the analyses points the way for a safe splashdown tomorrow, but still human emotion must be at play. How tense, stressed are you? So much is riding on this mission. All eyes will be, so focused on all this tomorrow around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that we'll all be anxious, and but we'll be with the families. We'll be with them. We'll all be together. I have full confidence in the team. They do too. That we've been with them the whole time, and so we've done the work.
Beautiful.
It's impossible to say you don't have irrational fears left, right? But I'd tell you, I don't have any rational fears about what's going to happen. We've done the work we need to, and we have full confidence in the team, the recovery team, the flight control team, analysis, and the work we did. Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Irene.
Irene Fox with Aviation Week, probably for Ahmed. At this point in the mission, how many in-flight anomalies have been are pending for action after splashdown? And compared to the list of objectives that you laid out for this whole mission, and realize you still have this very major part of it ahead, but how satisfied are you with that the mission objectives have been accomplished?
Well, Randy, I'll talk about the details, but I'll tell you the team has extracted every ounce of test data we can out of it. I'm very pleased with the coordination, the way that we've added objectives in flight, and the way we prioritize, like Jeff said, on cases where we need actual forensic data on the hardware we're getting back versus not. So we prioritize that the right way. But Randy, you want to talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the things that we've learned, right, it is a test flight, and so we are learning things on the spacecraft, and I think we've talked several of them in these press conferences as we have, but we gather those data, as Jeff noted. We take characterization tests of systems that we won't get back home, and when we get back home and the vehicle comes back, we'll do a lot of post-processing of all that data.
Okay, we'll take one more question here in the room, then head to the phone bridge. Go ahead.
Hi, TG Mascaro with the Epoch Times. Thanks so much, and congratulations on the mission so far. Question for Jeff. Can you walk us through how this reentry procedure differs from that of Apollo?
Let's see. In terms of it actually doesn't differ all that much in terms of just how fast we're coming back and how much has to go right. Of course, there are some minor timeline differences. The parachute systems are different between the two vehicles. But big picture, coming back from the moon is all really close to the same thing. You don't have the long coasting arcs that you have in low Earth orbit. You're really coming straight down and come in and hit the atmosphere a whole lot faster. But that means you go through it a whole lot faster too. And so I'd say it parallels Apollo much more than it does some of our low Earth orbit returns. And that's really what we're looking forward to. They're coming home pretty fast.
We'll take our next question on the phone bridge from Ken Chang with the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. I guess I'm following up on the previous question. So with the locked orbit, it comes up with it, and Apollo had direct re-entry, and Artemis 1 had the skip entry. So I guess it seems like it could be somewhere in the middle. If we can just give a few more details. Thank you.
Yeah, Ken. So we are still doing a skip entry where we've shortened the duration of the skip because of the limited use disposition of this particular heat shield. We know that it can tolerate X amount of dwell time during the allotted period, which is why we're shortening the duration. To follow up a little bit on the previous question too, one of the reasons we were willing to do that is because we figured we could control the entry weather, or not control, but deal with entry weather in terms of the down track. And so the duration of the heat load, heat rate, as well as the actual down track is shorter because that's the part of the environment that we decided to control with this particular instance of the heat shield. For future heat shields, we'll have a much longer skip capability.
With the Los Angeles Times.
Hi, thanks. I'm wondering if...
We'll keep a close eye on the NASA news conference. Obviously, tomorrow is going to be a very big day for these astronauts who we've all really gotten so much out of in terms of the photography up there and their own emotions, talking about what it's like to look back at Earth. So tomorrow's a big day in all of that. Coming up right here, Dana Perino and Jessica Tarlov this very busy hour, and new reporting today that President Trump is, quote, exploring punishment for the NATO countries that he says did not back the United States when they needed them.
Why do we have billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, over the years, trillions of dollars, and all these American forces stationed in the region if we can only use, in our time of need, we're not going to be allowed to use those bases?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
When choosing...
So one day after meeting with President Trump, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says that the alliance is willing to, quote, play a role in protecting the Strait of Hormuz, quote, if it can help. Doesn't sound like a hard and fast commitment. Little interesting language there. He also admits that some allies could have stepped up sooner to help with Operation Epic Fury. Watch.
And it came time to provide the logistical and other support the United States needed in Iran. Some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised. To maintain the element of surprise for the initial strikes, President Trump opted not to inform allies ahead of time, and I understand that.
So the White House now looking at possible punishments for some NATO allies, according to a piece in the Wall Street Journal today, quote, the proposal would involve moving U.S. troops out of NATO member countries deemed unhelpful to the Iran war effort and stationing them in countries that were more supportive. Let's bring in Dana Perino, co-anchor of America's Newsroom and co-host of The Five, and author of the great new novel, Purple State, which is very exciting. I've been reading it at night before bed, and it's a page turner. I promise you, I can't wait to find out what happens to these girls. You can get it April 21st. It goes on sale. I got a sneak early copy, so I'm lucky. Jessica Tarlov, co-host of The Five and Fox News contributor. Great to have both of you.
And also a Purple State fan. I read an early
She
draft.
read an early draft and then left because it
Check in the liberal writing. It was great.
Really good.
Thank you both.
So, Dana, let's take a look at this. NATO, basically, the president read the riot act to Mark Rutte yesterday, and he has been very open about how disgusted he is, really, with our NATO partners when it comes to this effort. What's your reaction to what Rutte is trying to do here, and where do you think it's headed?
I think he has a very difficult job. The good thing for him is that he does seem like a very good military man and a good diplomat, and he can speak Trump, and he can come and he can have a behind the closed doors meeting. He can take all of the incoming, he can try to represent, but he does represent a lot of different types of countries. If you think about our NATO allies in Eastern and Central Europe, they're great. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's one of the things President Trump is threatening. It's like, well, maybe Poland would do a better job here. I think that when they didn't allow the overflight rights, that seemed, like Marco Rubio has been saying, that seemed a little bit too far. But if you are the marriage counselor for NATO, I think that what you would say to all the parties involved is say, this marriage is worth saving. Everybody has some work to do. Canada, what is going on? Spain, no more. Also, Europe, stop trying to do all this nonsense to American tech companies. And also, President Trump, maybe not try to fight the two-front war on the tariffs at the same time. Do we still have a reason to have this union? And I think that the answer, if everybody had calm heads for a moment, would be yes. But everyone's going to have to come to the table with a little bit more.
But one of the problems, Jessica, is, because one of my thoughts with the Strait is that it would be great to see a flooding of ships of NATO members protecting the Strait and demonstrate with real material this is an open area and allow every ship to go through. The problem is the Brits don't have ships. They don't have ships anymore even. So they sold basically all of their capabilities, the greatest navy in history at one point, doesn't have any ships. So what's going on?
Well, what's going on is that they're dealing with the hand that they have right now, and I'm sure if they could go back in time and say maybe it would be better if we had kept a few ships around, and the French have some, but maybe they could use a bit more, that they would have made a different kind of decision. But they're dealing with their home politics and the assets that they have at this moment, and this war is deeply unpopular here, and it also is across the world, especially in these NATO countries. And I think that Secretary Rutte, who is doing this delicate dance, I love the marriage counselor analogy for this, said something really important, that the Allies were surprised by this. There was no heads up call about it, and I'm not saying that
Nonsense.
you have to, check every box with, everyone else to make sure that they're 100% on the same page. But everyone woke up to the same news, except for our government and the Israeli government. And I think that that is something that's been very difficult to process in a way to manage, again, their home politics, but also thinking ahead. And it wasn't one of these missions like Operation Midnight Hammer, when you say, okay, this is an in and out thing, right? They're going to be there 24 to 48 hours or whatever it was. I mean, this is going on 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum, and who knows what happens after this 2-week period as well. So they're looking at this as a long-term commitment. And
well, there's no doubt in my mind that if they had tipped off the Allies about this operation, that this little gathering of all the leaders that was a breakfast meeting that was uncanny in its in the opportunity that it presented, probably would have scattered very, very quickly. I don't think that there's any way that they could have given them a heads up on that morning in advance. Dana?
Well, yes, that is true. And then I think that we have to also deal with reality right now. If Iran feels like it can hold the rest of the world hostage at the Strait of Hormuz, then, okay, you might not like it, but everyone better step up and figure this out, because there's not going to be unconditional surrender, I guess. So that means, what are the objectives? The objective right now should be no one should be allowed to charge a toll to go through the Strait of Hormuz. It's not good for anybody. Yes, we are more energy independent. Everyone should take a little lesson on that too, but NATO should remember, especially the ones complaining. You're worried about President Putin? Well, Zelensky is showing the way. You could also help him, and again, that's why I say Central and Eastern European partners are a little bit better at this right now.
Well, because they understand the duress. They know what it's like to be threatened by Russia. They see what happened to Ukraine. When real events have a way of stiffening people's spine, and Europe and Asia get all of their fuel through this strait. South Korea and Japan, we've got 100,000 troops in those places protecting people there, and they're not willing to lift a finger. So
but they've also
shocking.
been able to strike their own deals, right? Like the Japanese has been able
Which
to
is also
back
kind of
down.
gross.
Yeah, I don't love it.
All right, thank you so much. So great to have you both here. It's like a 5 preview on this story, so thank you so much, you guys. Look forward to the 5 later. So we're continuing to monitor the NASA briefing splashdown that is expected a little more than 24 hours away now. We want to play you a very poignant message from one of the astronauts who says that what he says is more important than any mission. Watch. Okay, before we go, this touching message from astronaut Victor Glover.
As we continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos.
It stopped. John, it stopped.
Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. NATO's chief addresses the tensions between his alliance and President Trump over the Iran conflict and defense spending. Can a far-left progressive Democrat win a special congressional election in one of the country's wealthiest and most educated districts? We'll take you there. And increasing worries about the potential of artificial intelligence causing big problems. But first, breaking tonight, President Trump says he is very optimistic that a peace deal with Iran is within reach. The president making that comment to NBC News a short time ago. Iran, meantime, insists the Strait of Hormuz is open tonight. This comes amid a fragile ceasefire that has been complicated by Israeli attacks on Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. Israel and Lebanon are now expected to talk next week at the State Department in Washington, D.C. In-person talks between the U.S. and Iran are scheduled to begin Saturday in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance leads the U.S. team. Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich starts us off tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Brett. About 40 minutes ago, President Trump reacting to reports that Iran is charging tolls for tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, saying they better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. The development's coming as the early stages of the ceasefire appear to be holding. An Indian-flagged LNG carrier passing through the Strait of Hormuz Thursday, among the first signs Iran is, so far, holding up its end of the ceasefire bargain.
Anybody who communicates with the Iranian authority has got permission from the state.
Coordination necessary because of mines in the strait, Iran's deputy foreign minister confirmed.
Those technical restrictions are very much connected to the wartime condition, and it takes time to be removed. So safe passage is secure. We have maps, we have everything that, we have to be careful that, the safe passage of tankers and vessels and well-being of crews are actually met during this passage.
Today, President Trump revealing he personally played a part in facilitating Iran's demand that the ceasefire also apply to Israel's strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, telling NBC, "I spoke with Bibi and he's going to low-key it. I think we just have to be sort of a little more low-key." But while the fragile ceasefire holds, Trump also made clear in a post the pause could be lifted at any moment, saying in part, all U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel with additional ammunition, weaponry, and anything else that is appropriate and necessary will remain in place in and around Iran until such time as the real agreement reached is fully complied with. If for any reason it is not, which is highly unlikely, then the shooting starts, bigger and better and stronger than anyone has ever seen before.
A 2-week ceasefire is not sufficient.
House Democrats, meantime, are dead set on stopping any additional military action, saying they only need 2 more Republican signatures to stop the president with the War Powers Act.
We need a permanent end to Donald Trump's costly and reckless war of choice.
You need a permanent
and
end
House
of you.
Democrats are committed to bringing about that outcome.
Minority Leader Jeffries says Democrats will force a vote when Congress returns. So still not many details into the 15-point U.S. plan or the new 10-point Iranian proposal being discussed in Islamabad this weekend. There's also not much daylight into the proposed joint tolling venture with Iran that the president said he might entertain. But tonight the UK is leveling its opposition to the idea of any tolling in the strait, saying Iran cannot be allowed to introduce them. Brett.
And Jackie, First Lady Melania Trump made this unexpected public address today, denying close ties to Jeffrey Epstein and calling on Congress to hold a hearing for survivors. Do you know what spurred that?
Not yet, Brett. The Epstein story has been largely out of the news, and it's not clear yet what motivated the First Lady to address what she called lies and false smears about her.
To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998.
First Lady also said she had no knowledge of Epstein's abuse to his victims. White House officials were unable to provide any context, and they did not answer when we asked if President Trump was aware this statement would be coming. The First Lady's office said they're going to let her words stand on their own. Brad.
Okay, Jackie Heinrich live in the North Lawn. Jackie, thank you. Yeah. Wall Street had another good day on optimism over the possible end of the Iran conflict. The Dow gaining 276 today. The S&P 500 finished ahead 42. The Nasdaq jumped 187. As we told you earlier, Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is now open, and Israel will begin discussions with Lebanon next week in Washington over its bombing campaign against Hezbollah terrorists. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin is live in Tel Aviv tonight.
Following 2 days of reinvigorated airstrikes into Lebanon, that country's president said the only solution is a ceasefire, followed by talks with Israel. Israel's prime minister announced talks are planned.
To achieve 2 goals. First, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Second, an historic and sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
Israel claims to have killed 200 Hezbollah terrorists and struck crossings used to transfer weapons and missile launchers, and claims it assassinated a personal secretary to Hezbollah's new leader, Naim Qassem. But the intensified Israeli air campaign threatens the fragile ceasefire with Iran 2 days old. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, posting such actions signal deception and non-compliance, rendering negotiations meaningless. 40 days since Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in joint U.S.-Israeli strikes, pro-regime demonstrators take to the streets.
America is the great Satan. Our martyred leader always said we cannot negotiate with America.
Today, the first oil tanker crossed the Strait of Hormuz since the ceasefire. A total of 9 vessels passed through the waterway, critical to negotiations. U.S. naval ships and 50,000 U.S. warfighters sit on pause. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper congratulated them for 13,000 strikes that devastated weapons stores and the military-industrial base Iran spent 40 years building.
At the beginning of this campaign, I sent a letter to the force expressing my expectations, and our extraordinary warfighters exceeded each and every one of them.
The talks with Israel and Lebanon will be held next week in the U.S. at State Department headquarters. The negotiators will be the ambassadors for both nations. Brett, back to you.
Mike Tobin live in Tel Aviv. Mike, thank you. European diplomats tell Reuters NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is briefing allies that President Trump wants concrete commitments on security for the Strait of Hormuz within the next few days. This comes amid serious tensions between the alliance and its most important member. Senior foreign policy correspondent Jillian Turner has that part of the story tonight from the State Department.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is still in Washington after high-stakes meetings with the President and Secretary of State.
This alliance is not whistling past the graveyard, as you say in the United States.
He got candid about the rift in the transatlantic alliance over support for the U.S. military during Operation Epic Fury, or lack thereof.
When it came time to provide the logistical and other support the United States needed in Iran, some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised.
European diplomats tout Rutte as a so-called Trump whisperer, but he's not saying whether the president plans to actually withdraw from the alliance. Critics are calling the president's threats to do so illegal, insisting the move would require an act of Congress.
This is the most successful military and diplomatic alliance in the history of the world. And the president in real time is trying to dismantle it.
NATO Article 5 calls an armed attack against one member an attack against all, and triggers a collective defense. It has been invoked as once in history on behalf of the United States.
He's trying to get them to pay their way.
After the 9/11 attacks. But that was 25 years ago.
I'm very disappointed in NATO. Very. I think that NATO, it's a mark on NATO that will never disappear. Never disappear in my mind.
Thousands of NATO soldiers later gave their lives fighting alongside America in Afghanistan.
Well, President Trump and his cabinet have been considering potential options to seek retaliation against some NATO members, countries they say have been unhelpful during Operation Epic Fury. Tonight, interestingly, Reuters has an exclusive. They're reporting the president might actually order the Pentagon to pull troops from some NATO bases, Brett.
We'll follow that. Jillian Turner, live at the State Department. Jillian, thank you. ICE is marking the one-year anniversary of its program designed to give voice to victims of immigration-related crime. Some of those victims' family members poured their hearts out today. Congressional correspondent Bill Maluzhin shows us tonight, and his story does contain some graphic video.
Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. There are repercussions, and my family lives it every day.
Angel families gathering in Washington today to honor their loved ones killed and maimed at the hands of illegal immigrants.
A tragedy like mine and the other families that are here, could have been prevented.
Birthdays, holidays, Mother's Days have never been the same. I buried my son a week before Mother's Day.
It was all part of an ICE news conference highlighting the one-year anniversary of the relaunch of its Victims of Immigrant Crime Engagement Office, which was shuttered under President Biden.
When ICE officers and special agents are demonized, called Nazis, hated, there's violence against them. We do it for these individuals.
And it comes as migrant crime has been all over the headlines. In Fort Myers, Florida, police arrested this Haitian illegal alien after they say he was caught on camera brutally bludgeoning a gas station clerk to death with a hammer. In Fairfax County, Virginia, illegal aliens have been arrested for 3 out of 4 of the county's murders so far this year. after Democratic Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger ended all state cooperation with ICE. DHS says 3 of those suspects entered the U.S. during the Biden administration.
What's your message to Governor Spanberger and to Fairfax County, a sanctuary jurisdiction?
For us, it's so frustrating because we see innocent people getting murdered all the time, and it's totally preventable. And if, elected officials like the governor want to give me a call and work with us, that's what we want.
And Brett, ICE Director Lyons went on to tell us that ICE has now arrested more than 453,000 criminal aliens. Those are aliens who have been charged with or convicted of a crime since President Trump began his second term in office. We'll send it back to you.
A lot of people. Bill, thank you. Up next, why the eyes of the nation will be on a special congressional election next week in New Jersey. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 5 in New York, as attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs try to persuade federal judges that the hip-hop mogul was treated unfairly at the trial that sent him to prison on prostitution-related charges. They say his conviction should be reversed, or he should at least be freed and resentenced to reduce time. Judges did not make a decision today. Fox 11 in Los Angeles says a sheriff's deputy in Portville is reportedly fatally shot. A suspect with a high-powered rifle is said to be barricaded in or near a school. The sheriff says all the children are safe. A Facebook post from the sheriff says deputies were serving an eviction notice when the shooting started. Fox 35 in Orlando, as a school bus driver is charged with nearly 30 counts of child neglect, as well as reckless driving after her vehicle was clipped by a train last week. Yvonne Hampton drove onto the railroad tracks and then was blocked by a car in front of her as the train advanced. She pulled most of the bus out of the way, but not all of it. No one, unfortunately, was injured. And this is a live look at Seattle from Fox 13. One of the big stories there tonight, an Amazon Flex driver is arrested after neighbors reported seeing hundreds of boxes accumulating on her property. Deputies found a massive stash of undelivered orders, valued at $12,000. The suspect admitted to accepting delivery routes and pay, despite having no intention of delivering those items. That's tonight's live look. Outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. Trying to figure out games. The head of the Federal Communications Commission says his panel is looking into whether sports leagues should continue to benefit from a special antitrust exemption. The NFL says its media distribution model is the most fan and broadcaster friendly in the sports and entertainment industry. We are a week away from a big special election in New Jersey. At issue is whether a hard-left Democratic candidate can win the congressional seat vacated by now Governor Mikey Sherrill. National correspondent Brian Yennis takes a look tonight from Bellevue, New Jersey. Belleville, New Jersey.
I say abolish ICE now!
Activist Ana Lilia Mejia is favored to win New Jersey's 11th congressional district special election next Thursday and become one of the most progressive members of Congress. Mejia supports Medicare for all, including what she calls essential health care for transgender people, free college tuition, a $25 federal minimum wage, accused Israel of genocide, and wants to abolish ICE.
We don't need armed thugs running around our streets shooting American people just for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Mejia is endorsed by the so-called Progressive Squad and Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders. She's even said Jesus was likely a Democratic Socialist, but Mejia insists she's not.
Sure, I mean, Ms. Mejia doesn't want to say if she's a socialist or not, but I think the facts will show.
I said I'm not.
Councilman Joe Hathaway is running against Mejia, selling himself as a common-sense new generation Republican, not afraid to stand up to President Trump.
I think tariffs need to be used as a scalpel, not as a negotiating tool and as a hammer like we've been seeing.
Hathaway says a Mejia win in one of the nation's wealthiest and most educated districts would send a dangerous signal.
If we have Democrat, socialist, radical candidates like this winning in a district like NJ11, there's no reason they can't continue to move across, and the Democratic Party will slide further and further into a socialist party. I think that's bad for our state. I think it's very bad for our country.
Early voting is underway. The winner of this special election serves out the remaining 8 months of now Governor Mikey Sherrill's congressional term. Now, ultimately, both candidates plan to run again in June primaries ahead of the November general election. Brett?
Brian Yenes, live in New Jersey. Brian, thanks. We have some interesting information tonight on how your fellow Americans feel about wasteful government spending. It comes during the Trump administration's new anti-fraud crackdown. Here's White House correspondent Aisha Hasni.
Tonight, California's Democrat Attorney General announcing a major hospice fraud scheme. Authorities arresting 5 out of 21 suspects as they say 14 fake hospice companies fraudulently billed California $267 million using stolen identities.
Trump is late to the party. California DOJ has been going after healthcare fraud since 1979.
It comes amid a war of words between Governor Gavin Newsom's administration and the Trump administration over accusations that state officials are failing to fight fraud in the Golden State. Last week, the feds busted 8 fraudulent hospice providers in LA billing Medicare for patients that didn't exist.
If you just look at the money that we pay as a federal government for insurance, we think there's about $100 billion of fraud.
The White House is taking an aggressive position to root out fraud nationwide. New Fox News polling shows 53% of Americans say a great deal of government spending is wasteful, while 22% say almost all is. This week, Vice President J.D. Vance's new anti-fraud task force said it uncovered nearly $6.3 billion in potentially fraudulent government contracts. The task force now sending out letters to about 400 companies demanding proof of their legitimacy within 30 days or they lose their contracts.
And Brett, a spokesperson for the VP, telling Fox that if fraudsters are robbing hardworking Americans of their tax dollars and services, we will find them. Brett?
Aisha, thank you. Up next, we talk with Victor Davis Hanson about the situation in the Middle East and U.S. tensions with NATO, and then a live report from Johnson Space Center as the Artemis II mission prepares for a return to Earth.
Safe passage is secure. Strait of Hormuz is open.
Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain were all subject to attacks. In the first day of this, the strait was not open.
They have said that they're going to start letting many more ships through. We'll watch as the day progresses.
Well, is the Strait of Hormuz open as Iran contends, or isn't it? Joining us tonight, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow Historian Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, thanks for being here. First of all, 30,000 feet. How do you see this right now? What has happened with the ceasefire and what we're seeing out of Iran and the back and forth with the U.S.?
Well, they have a history they can't be trusted, that's for sure. But all the options are on our side if we choose to operate. We've done about $500 billion in damage over a 47-year investment that they've lost. They've got a rested population. They're going to have to explain to the population when this is over that we're going to spend billions of dollars to rearm at your expense, and you're not going to have affordable food and gas. And we're also going to subsidize Arab terrorists like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthi. That's going to be very difficult to do. And then if we want to go, we can go. If Donald Trump thinks he has domestic pressures, he can go back. He can go. The second option, Brett, is he can join the European Armada, such as it is. He can provide them air cover and force open the Strait of Hormuz. And the third, of course, is he can say the negotiations are stalled, and here's another deadline, and this time just keep it. And he could take out Karg Island. I think the Chinese would be very angry about that. Or he could take out the dual use. I will say, Brett, there's been a little confusion about this infrastructure, not just World War II or Korea, but Vietnam, and as well, the first Gulf War, we hit power plants, we hit communications, we hit transportation, we hit water plants. We did it in Serbia. We destroyed every bridge on the Danube River. We knocked out the power grid of Belgrade, 1.5 million people. Even the misadventure, 7 months in Libya, they said that they weren't going to do that, but they hit civilian ships, port facilities, television stations. So that was kind of a red herring. That's a legitimate target according to our past policies. We could always do that.
The other thing about NATO, I think people kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the vice president is leading this team, obviously with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in Pakistan and Islamabad for these talks. Now, the Strait and being open is a key point. The other key point is the highly enriched uranium and who gets it, how it happens, and how does it get out of there?
Yes. Yeah, well, it hasn't been determined exactly where it is and which of the two conflicting theories are correct, that they have moved it or they have the ability to move it, or it's deeply embedded and scattered under a mountain, so that has to be adjudicated. And we can't even define what the Strait of Hormuz being open or closed means. There has to be a certain number of tankers or a percentage that are allowed in, but those are, if you have overwhelming military power, you can force those concessions. The problem the United States has right now is not military. They can do what they need. It's Donald Trump's political problems, and that is, of course, public opinion on the war in general and his popularity and the people in Congress that need to be reelected in the Republican Party in the midterms, and of course in the economy as well. Those are the pressures that really matter. But militarily, they can do almost anything they want, and they can achieve both of those objectives if they want to. It's just a matter of how much of a political price they're willing to risk.
Right. The Trump Truth Social just earlier, before the show, said there are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now, President Donald J. Trump. He communicates via Truth Social a lot of times. He's also telling NATO they need to come up with a concrete plan to help open the strait.
Yeah, I think when General Mattis was CENTCOM commander under the Obama administration, they threatened to do things like that, and he brought a multilateral armada through, and we could, I don't think there's any problem if the Europeans would step up, we could provide air cover or join it. But if they don't want to do it and the Iranians double down, then we have a list of targets that we can just check off each hour until they want to open it. And if they don't want to open it, they'll take a level of damage that will take a decade to repair. So the problem with the NATO is I think there's a lot of miscommunications. They feel that the United States, this was a singular or unilateral operation. Of course it was, but they do that all the time. We supported France and Chad on a kind of a crazy mission, a post-colonial mission for almost 30 years. And they got us into Libya, and that was a coalition of the willing. I think you could argue that Strait of Hormuz is far more critical to the national security of Europe than the Arab Spring in Libya. We bombed for 7 months for no avail. Kosovo was not in NATO, and they made the argument that the coalition of NATO powers should stop, and I think it was a correct one, stop Milosevic's genocide, but they weren't able to do it. So we stepped in and did 80% of the missions. My only point is that they do this all the time where they have a particular mission and they don't get it approved by the entire membership, and sometimes they act unilaterally or in triplets or 4 or 5. And so if they're not going to be reciprocal, I think NATO will always exist, but it'll be a name only, and Donald Trump and his administration or subsequent ones will pick and choose which NATO members they can count on, and they'll do what the NATO members have done in the past. They'll say who wants to go to Libya or who wants to go to Serbia, and some don't. I don't think that if Spain has a problem with North Africa or something, I don't think we're going to be there very ready to help Spain, of course.
Well, we'll see how this all comes together. Victor Davis Hanson, always interesting getting your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the Artemis II crew is getting ready for their final act. We'll go live to Johnson Space Center in Texas. And then, are you worried about artificial intelligence? You're not alone. We have some information about a new program that may be causing some of those fears.
Who are the other people that will eventually have this capability, or other potentially dangerous capabilities who won't be cautious, let alone other companies and other nation states?
Correspondent Jonathan Seri is at the Johnson Space Center in Texas again tonight. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening to you, Brett. On the way back from the far side of the moon, Artemis 2 is now preparing for the grand finale. The Navy has dispatched the USS John P. Murtha to a splashdown site off the coast of San Diego to recover the astronauts when their Orion space capsule returns late Friday.
We have to get back. There's so much data that you've seen already, but all the good stuff is coming back with us. There's so many more pictures, so many more stories, and riding a fireball through the atmosphere is profound as well.
At nearly 24,000 miles per hour, the capsule must strike Earth's atmosphere at just the right angle to slow to a parachute-assisted splashdown at less than 20 miles per hour.
This is the Orion mission simulator. It looks like the cockpit of the Artemis 2 spacecraft. Up here, you can even see the moon out the window. It has a direct link to mission control here in Houston. It's not only used for training astronauts, but for testing procedures to uplink to the actual crew in space.
As the 4 astronauts return to Earth's gravitational bonds, they say the mission has also strengthened the ties among the crew.
The 4 of us are now forged in a friendship that is very unique, and we will cherish this bond that we share for the rest of our lives.
This sense of teamwork is something that you don't usually get, like, as an adult. I mean, we are close, like, brothers and sisters.
And forecasters say the weather at the primary splashdown site looks really good for tomorrow. They are looking at a splashdown around 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Brett?
We'll carry it live here on Fox. Jonathan, thanks. Well, for those of you who think artificial intelligence is dangerous, or could be, this next story may not make you feel any better. Tech firm Anthropic has begun a tightly controlled rollout of a model considered dangerous enough to risk total catastrophe. Here's senior national correspondent Rich Edson.
It's very powerful, generally, in a lot of ways.
Anthropic says its new Claude Mythos preview model is better than most skilled humans at exploiting security flaws in critical software, discovering, quote, thousands of high-severity vulnerabilities, including some in every major operating system and web browser. Given the rate of AI progress, it will not be long before such capabilities proliferate, potentially beyond actors who are committed to deploying them safely. Currently, Anthropic has no plans to release Mythos to the public.
We're starting out by deploying it with a number of companies and organizations and developers that maintain some of the most important code in the world, so we can help to defend it first.
Anthropic says only about 40 organizations have access to Mythos, including Apple, Google, and JP Chase, to find and fix weaknesses in their foundational systems.
Cyber is huge and is getting worse every single year.
Axios reports Anthropic competitor OpenAI is finalizing an advanced security model it plans to release to a small set of organizations. One analyst says governments need to contain these developments before AI itself becomes too powerful.
I'm worried that we just don't know how to control those systems. We'll lose control of them, and that could very likely result in human extinction. We're just not ready.
The Trump administration is pushing Congress to pass a law governing aspects of AI that would supersede a patchwork of state regulations. Anthropic says it has discussed Mythos' offensive and defensive cyber capabilities with U.S. government officials. Separately this week, a federal appeals court denied Anthropic's request to temporarily block the Pentagon from blacklisting the company after a dispute over whether the military could use its AI without certain restrictions. Florida's Attorney General has just announced an investigation into OpenAI and ChatGPT over allegations the program helped a gunman attack Florida State's campus last year. Brett?
All right, Rich, thank you. Up next, the panel on the tenuous ceasefire in the Middle East. First, beyond our borders tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin declares a 32-hour ceasefire in Ukraine over the Orthodox Easter weekend. Putin's decree orders Russian forces to observe a ceasefire starting on Saturday afternoon, lasting until the end of Sunday. Putin's move follows Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's proposal earlier this week to observe a pause in attacks on each other's energy infrastructure over the Orthodox Easter. And this is a live look at Rome. One of the big stories there tonight, Pope Leo welcomes the Harlem Globetrotters to St. Peter's Square. The Pope was seen, check this out, attempting one of the team's classic tricks, spinning that red, white, and blue basketball on finger with the help of the players. He's got some moves, just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back.
What do you think?
Well, we have an agreement with the Iranians that they're going to open the Straits of Hormuz and that we'll have a ceasefire.
Let's have a vote to end this war because the ceasefire is a joke.
Iran's in a better place with respect to the Strait than they were before this war started.
They've got to unconditionally open the Strait of Hormuz, and they've got to commit to ending the sowing of violence.
We still have leverage to it, and the leverage is simply this. The deadline is 2 weeks. We hold to the deadline.
Straightening out the Strait. Is it open? Is it not? What's going on with this deal? Just a few minutes ago during this show, the President issued a truth social saying Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have. President Donald J. Trump. Here's the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran.
The Strait of Hormuz is open. Of course, there are technical restrictions because of the war zone. This is why that all the ships that they would like to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they have to communicate with our army and our military contact points there because of the limitations in this strait. And this strait is a very narrow strait.
Well, with that, let's bring in our panel. Fox News contributor Ben Domenech, host of the Big Ben podcast, Mary Catherine Ham, Fox News contributor, and Democratic campaign consultant Kevin Walling. Okay, Ben, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think the president is clearly sending a message that he wants and expects the Iranians to live up to their side of what was within this ceasefire agreement from the get-go, which is the kind of thing that the markets responded to. The strait being open is of the utmost importance to him, and he views that as a precedent for any kind of future negotiations that could lead to a ceasing of hostilities in the long term. I just think that there's no reason at this point, Brett, to put any faith in the Iranians. I understand that the president feels like he's talking to people who are treating this more objectively, with more clarity than the people he was talking to before. But there's just no reason that we should trust them to live up to their obligations after so many years of experience.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't trust them.
Mary Catherine, the NATO Secretary General is saying the European countries have heard President Trump. Take a listen.
Some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised. To maintain the element of surprise for the initial strikes, President Trump opted not to inform allies ahead of time. Nearly without exception, allies are doing everything the United States is asking.
So, is there hope maybe that they're going to come around?
I think Rutte gets Trump, and his message to him is more likely to land than, say, a Macron. I understand Trump's frustrations, and I share some of them, particularly when it comes to opening airspace and air bases and that kind of thing. However, when you are doing something and you need immediate help, I think his strong-arming has helped to make those countries invest in their own military over the long term. But when you need immediate help, sometimes you got to play the good cop. That is part of statecraft, and I think a little bit more of that along the way would be helpful to getting them along. As far as trusting these guys in a negotiation, as Ben was noting, we have this upcoming with several unreliable partners in the room, Pakistan and Iran. But I'm heartened by the fact that Trump in the past has already, in negotiations with Iran, when they try to get squirrely, when they try to renege as they always do, that he has been willing to restart, to strike, and hopefully he will be again, because you have to hold that line.
The vice president leading that team, Kevin, in Islamabad, and he talked about how Israel now is going to talk with Lebanon about what's happening in Hezbollah. Here he is.
The Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful. That's not because that is part of the ceasefire.
So there'll be talks in D.C. at the State Department between Israel and Lebanon, and there'll be talks in Islamabad with the Vice President, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and the Iranians.
Yeah, Brett. I mean, trust is everything, and there is quite a fundamental lack of it. Let's not forget that Lebanon and Israel have been in a de facto state of war going back to 1948. And of course, obviously, the Israelis are super focused on taking on Hezbollah, as they have even before this war started 6 weeks ago. It's been a key focus of theirs, an important focus of theirs, because of the nature of the rockets that still come across Israel's northern border. But of course, negotiations are important. This is a first step. The lead for that is going to be the Israeli ambassador to the United States, our ambassador to Lebanon, and we'll see who Beirut sends next week to engage in those conversations. But certainly a good step forward to see some kind of positive outcome with that northern border situation with Israel.
Yeah, just tonight there were sirens in Tel Aviv about possibly a Hezbollah rocket being fired. We're following that. Meantime, Ben, the First Lady comes out and delivers this message about Epstein and lies linking her to disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein. She has this pretty long statement in which she also calls for public hearings. Take a listen.
I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
President Trump told NBC he didn't know that the First Lady was going to do this before she did. What about this message in the middle of all of this?
Well, it was certainly surprising. I mean, I was talking to people who were covering the White House, including, several White House correspondents about this, about how much it came out of left field. The First Lady clearly is very passionate about it and feels personally offended and insulted by what she views as fake news reports that have gone and circled around this, including potentially, ones that she anticipated. But moving at this particular time to put this subject back into center stage, I'm not sure that the rest of the White House press team was expecting that or ready for it. We'll see how this plays out going forward. I will say that for the women who she's talking about testifying in front of Congress, that under oath part plays both ways. And there's some people who have had, I think, situations where they've been able to claim a lot of things without being under oath. We'll see how many people stand up and are willing to do that.
Mary Catherine, AP has a headline, Pam Bondi won't appear for House deposition next week in the Epstein investigation. Just interesting timing on all of this for the First Lady's statement.
Yeah, I'm sure she seems passionate about it. I'm sure that the president and many of his staff are not excited to have this thrown back out there again. Many of the folks I think that she's referring to were in a Super Bowl ad. They have been public, and I think that yes, in a different area under oath, there might be different details that we would find out.
Last word, Kevin.
It was certainly a surprising statement. We don't often hear from the First Lady, but there was passion in her voice, especially for the victims. And I still think you see bipartisan support to have now the former Attorney General before the Oversight Committee, and we'll see how that continues to play out.
Okay, panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Brett.
Finally, tonight, a special day.
I just want to say, man, go blue, baby!
Fans gathered outside the Chrysler Center in Ann Arbor Tuesday to welcome home the Michigan Wolverines after they were crowned the 2026 NCAA basketball tournament champions. Wolverines greeted and thanked supporters with Coach Dusty May telling fans the trophy truly belongs to them. Michigan beat Connecticut 69-63 Monday night. Championship parade and rally for the Wolverines scheduled for Saturday. Pretty cool. Tomorrow's special report, former Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia hits the campaign trail to urge people in the Commonwealth to vote no on a redistricting referendum. Remember, if you can't catch us live, set your DVR, 6 p.m. in the East, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. You can follow me on TikTok, X, and Instagram at Brett Baer for exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Did manage to go down to the Masters yesterday, as you saw on the show. It is fantastic, and it looks like it's